Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605 box office bonus episode. This week we're joined. Um, wow, I cannot talk today. I can't talk today. I am
Take two.
Brian. Take two.
Okay.
I am Brian Mensing. I am your host, and joining me as always is Derrick Veurink. How you doing tonight?
Doing great. You?
Clearly, I need to to sleep. That's what I need to do. Um, so yes, this week here, what are we discussing for our bonus episode here, Derrick?
Yeah. So, as we've tried to do on the show, every month we try to do an episode that ties into what Brian and Casey and Sam are doing on the main Backlot podcast. And for the month of February, they did the movies of Viola Davis. So, we're going to look at her box office stats and her biggest movies to perform at the box office over her long career.
Yes, we will definitely get to see for myself here how much of a blind spot of Viola Davis do I really have? Um, because there was one episode during the main show that I unfortunately for scheduling purposes and whatnot I had to miss,
Yep.
and that will be one of the movies that we will be talking about this week. It looks like here.
Yay.
So going to there is the top 10 Viola Davis movies at the box office, starting with number one. The David Ayer directed Suicide Squad comes in at $325.1 million. Um, Clearly, obviously, a very ensemble cast. Clearly, Viola Davis is not why people were going to go see this movie. However, if there's anything that this movie certainly did, is it solidified the fact that Viola Davis is Amanda Waller, and nobody can replace Viola Davis as Amanda Waller.
Yeah, I mean, again, we first off, we've talked about this movie on these bonus shows before because it came up on our Will Smith episode.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, there's a ton of people on there that'll it just shows up in their filmography, And
Yep.
with Viola Davis, again, she doesn't have much screen time, but as you'll kind of see as we go through this list, especially like in her pre-Oscar The Help era career. Um, she was often cast as people in authority positions.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need somebody to play Amanda Waller and have that authority. Viola Davis can get it done and get it done quick. Um, and I think it speaks to her success in this movie amidst everything else that one, she never received any blowback from the critical drubbings of this movie.
Yep.
And two, when James Gunn got the opportunity to make the Suicide Squad, and Warner Brothers told him, you can pick and choose what elements of the original 2016 movie you want to keep and pour it over to your new movie. Obviously, his first thing he said was, "Yep, we're bringing back Margot Robbie and we're bringing back Viola Davis because she's just that good of a cornerstone and semi-antagonistic boss." So,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. If like you said, I mean, there's the instance in this movie amongst other movies and whatnot. She doesn't have a lot of screen time, but in terms of her character, she's so memorable because she owns every minute that she's on that screen.
yep,
Um, and in that same instance here, we go into number two with The Help coming in at $169.71 million. This is the movie this is one of the movies we got to talk about on the main podcast here, but unfortunately I was out that week. Um, and it still bums me out that I still haven't had an opportunity to sit down and watch this here because I hear just overall movie is it's just a great movie.
yeah. I mean, I remember when this movie came out. This is interesting because this came out in like mid-August of 2011, and usually when you're getting to like the mid-August through Labor Day period at the box office, that's where studios are kind of dumping out their has-been material.
Hmm.
But certainly The Help, really connected with audiences, really carried through the box office that August and September, rode its way to multiple Oscar nominations and even a win. So it did incredibly well. Again, it has a lot of crowd pleasing, feel good elements to it. You know, obviously, despite it, it's racism topics. But yeah, I mean, it was an incredible blockbuster. It did a lot of prominence, for building up the careers of Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer, and even to an extent Emma Stone, kind of transitioning her from
Yeah.
the comedic sphere into more of like a dramatic actress, which ultimately culminates with her winning Best Actress for La La Land 5 years later.
Hmm. Oh, for sure. I mean, there's so many great performances from, again, having missed the boat on this one for 12 years now. My understanding is there's some great performances, but yeah, like you said, the kind of the shift for Emma Stone, most specifically here. Um, this one is gonna be one of those ones. This one is a total blind spot here for me. Number three, Medea goes to jail. Coming in $90.51 million, and the reason why I say that is just because I have never seen a single Medea movie ever. Uh, I don't know. I hear they're fun.
I mean, they do have a dedicated audience. If I'm not mistaken, Medea Goes to Jail was actually the biggest box office hit in Tyler Perry's Medea filmography. So there's that. With Viola Davis, in this movie, she plays a former drug addict and prostitute turned minister. Um, and the main thing to keep in mind with this is, again, we're going to get into some other roles here where Viola Davis is clearly like a supporting figure, or
Hmm.
doing kind of a semi thankless role. But here, we have to keep in mind here is at this particular point in time, Tyler Perry was kind of giving significant roles to black female actresses.
Hmm.
So you had things like Viola Davis getting this part, or like giving Taraji P Henson uh, good roles. She was kind of in the box office post Benjamin Button wilderness, so to speak. So even though people won't necessarily associate this movie with Viola Davis, at first glance or second glance, um, that's kind of the where it falls noteworthy in terms of what Tyler Perry was doing for actresses at that time, and just kind of where her career was at prior to like The Help really giving her the big popularity boost.
Definitely. Oh yeah. Sometimes it is kind of fun where you see some of these movies you don't expect to find a certain person or whatnot, even big, small, whatnot, and just be like, oh hey, I did like I would have had no clue. Granted, I'm curious to see this just because you said of what she was to what she became in that movie to go from drug using prostitute to a minister makes me go, I kinda wanna see that Viola Davis. I kinda wanna see it just because of that, and it's those kind of things. You put those right kind of people into those kind of weird kind of roles and whatnot, and people would be like, "I wanna go see that."
Yeah, I mean, again, it's still very much a supporting role,
Mhm.
but it's a bit more of an interesting role than some of the stuff we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, coming in at number 4, Eat, Pray, Love, coming in at $80.57 million. Just barely a year and a half later after Medea goes to jail. This is one of those ones where like when I think of this movie, she's not who I think about when I think about this movie. But again, I guess I'm not into those myself personally into those kind of movies to the point where I've never even seen this one either.
no, I haven't seen it either.
Hmm.
I remember when this came out because this was the same weekend as two other movies, which I was much more concerned with seeing, which was Scott Pilgrim versus the World
Hmm.
and the first Expendables movie.
I
And
was
I
there for the
remember,
Expendables.
yep. So obviously, I saw both. I was much more excited for both of those than Eat, Pray, Love. Even though it was a Ryan Murphy joint, right as
Mm,
he's becoming ascending on the TV spear, because this was after Glee had started, before American Horror Story. You kind of notched this in here again. Viola Davis is, in a semi-prominent but still semi-thankless role because she's playing Julia Roberts' best friend, and
mhm.
that's basically it. But again, you know, still getting some prominence. Ryan Murphy, again, another one of those directors who knows how to wield and use actresses, especially on his TV shows like Jessica Lange and kind of
Yep.
Britain on American Horror Story. So that kind of fuses into here as well.
Yeah, if there's one thing, I mean, again, not have seen in this, but I do know in regards to, especially like American Horror Story, because of the anthology aspect of it and whatnot. If there's one thing that, he can do for the sake of all of his actors, especially his female actors, is know how to use them. So I would expect nothing less out of somebody with her kind of caliber of performance, and to have somebody who knows how to use them. I can't imagine that, she's put it on a great performance as well in this one.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 5, Night and Day, $76.42 million. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even realize this movie made that much money, because from what I understand, this is not one of the high caliber Tom Cruise movies.
No, because again, this was in Tom Cruise's wilderness.
Hmm.
Because this was after Couchgate, which is kind of like that span of
True.
like Mission Impossible 3 underperformed. Then he kind of had these movies that flagged out, like this and Valkyrie didn't do well as well. This is the movie where they were trying to hopefully because I remember the advertising campaign was kind of trying to hype up this time Tom Cruise's character is actually kind of crazy, as if to hint like it's riffing on his actual public persona. But it still didn't really do that much because of that. Even with the Tom Cruise Cameron Diaz pairing, there was some hope for that too. Viola Davis again here. She has an authority role only in this movie. A small supporting part as the director of the CIA, if I'm not mistaken. So again, doing those kind of like disgruntled, like what's Tom Cruise doing? Get Tom Cruise, etc. Blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
So there's that.
Well, if anything, just in the ones that we've seen so far between that and, like, say, the Suicide Squad, if there's one thing that we have learned about Viola Davis, put her an authoritative, you know, character, and she is going to crush it no matter how much screen time she has.
Yep.
All right, coming in at number 6, Law Abiding Citizen, $73.36 million. I'm just gonna say this personally, as Viola Davis aside and whatnot. I wish this movie would have done better, because I thoroughly enjoyed the living hell out of this movie.
Yeah. This is a very cheesy, very cheesily violent movie.
Hmm.
I remember like being in the theater when like the cell phone kill happens, and you're
That's
like,
yes.
and going like, holy crap, what was that? It has some gleeful fun, with how Gerard Butler's character knocks off all these people. It's absolutely ridiculous in that regard as well.
Hmm.
But I just found it to be a very amusing time at the movies because of that. And yeah, I think because of that, I definitely see where you're going in terms of this should have done a little bit better. But again, $73 million for a movie like this back in 09, I think that's pretty solid no matter what.
I mean, I can't argue that, but I'm just thinking, '09, Gerard Butler's really making a name for himself in the action movies, whatever. Jamie Foxx has got a good name for himself and whatnot. And with the weird, and like you said, the kind of the over the top, there is a little bit of campy about it and whatnot. But, like, I don't know. I think the populace, undersold this poor movie, because it's so much fun. And you are correct. The cell phone is by far the one scene in that entire movie where I was like, that just happened.
And again, Viola Davis again playing another authority figure in here. She plays the city mayor in
Hmm.
this movie. So again, you can kind of see where she was kind of getting into a little bit of a rut in like this late '09 or '09 2010 era, as it were.
Hmm. Yeah. Coming in at number 7, we have Ender's Game, $61.74 million. This was just one of those ones, because this is based off YA book, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
this is very much in the heyday where like Twilight is taking off, Harry Potter's wrapping up, The Hunger
Hunger
Games is starting
Games.
to rev up. So studios are like, we have to make every semi-recognizable YA hit, you know, into a movie, even if it's stuff from like the '80s, like Ender's Game, that people know and recognize. We have to get it made into a movie, and so
Mhm.
that's what they did with this, and it did just okay. Not enough to generate a franchise, obviously, but again, this is Lionsgate again, which they at the time they had the Twilight movies, they had the Hunger Games movies, they were about to do the Divergent movies, so they were all in on this kind of stuff back then.
Yeah, I was say that was like Lionsgate's bread and butter in terms of if it wasn't a Saw movie,
Yep,
it
or a
it
Medea
was
movie. It was a YA movie.
exactly, exactly. Which I think partly I kind of see it is that, if Lionsgate was going to be all in on this kind of whatnot, is I think they were oversaturating their own market basically.
Oh yeah,
Is because people were like you said, people, we had Twilight through Summit, we have Hunger Games, we have all these whatever. People are getting burnt out to the point where they're like, maybe if they had spaced them out over the course of 15, 20 years, it wouldn't have been as bad, I think.
perhaps, but at least we got past that fad semi quickly. There's that.
Right. That is true. Coming in at number 8, Prisoners coming at $61 million. So, she looking at this here, couple movies within a couple months of each other.
Yeah, I mean, again, both of these are kind of smaller roles because she plays like Harrison Ford's second in command in Ender's Game. In Prisoners, she's the mother of the other girl that gets kidnapped, if I'm not mistaken, alongside Hugh Jackman's daughter. So she's not in it very much, especially once you get past the beginning of the movie. But again, it is a very solid cast. Again, this is the very first American movie made by Denis Villeneuve,
Mhm.
which kind of blindsided me when it came out in the fall of 2013, because just kind of snuck up on me like, oh, here's this 2 hour and 40 minute, like crime investigative type movie with Hugh Jackman as a father trying to find his daughter. And I didn't really know much about it going in. I definitely not seen a Villeneuve movie going in. But I went in on like a Friday afternoon at like 5 p.m. to watch this, and I came out of the theater saying, I think this is the best movie I've seen so far this year. And it definitely announced Denis Villeneuve as a major talent to watch out for in the future, just off this movie alone.
Yeah, because he really didn't have a whole lot of United States presence prior to this, right?
Well, he had not made a movie in the US before. All the stuff that he had made prior to this was up in Canada. So
I gotcha.
this is the very first big studio movie. And then his next actual American effort was a couple years later with Sicario, and then Arrival the year after that.
Gotcha. All right, coming in at number 9. One that we actually just recently just discussed on the main podcast here. Fence is coming at $57.68 million. An absolutely amazing performance from Viola Davis in this movie. To basically go toe to toe with Denzel Washington. Um, the one thing I will certainly give this, honestly, I would say for the sake of the performances in this movie and everything that this movie is, I do feel that it clearly was undersold. It should have easily broke more than what it did for that $57 million. Um, but just because performances alone, it's worth its money.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the movie that netted Viola Davis her Oscar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So there's that. I remember when this movie came out because this was positioned as a Christmas Day release during a very competitive Christmas that was mostly dominated by Rogue One, but also had
Oh,
movies like Passengers with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, and the original animated Sing came out then. So certainly Fences had its competition. It's also a bit of a kind of dark movie to put out at Christmas time. And I remember when I picked up the Blu-ray for this movie a few months later, and it came out, and it just has basically a picture of Denzel and Viola Davis hugging and smiling on the cover.
yes, they look
Which,
very happy when they're not very happy in that movie.
yeah, and I always had thought to myself, that is kind of a deceptive way to promote this movie and get people to watch it. But you know, it's a Hollywood studio, so I'm not surprised they did it like that.
I would agree. I would agree. And then rounding out our top 10 is the James Gunn fueled uh, the Suicide Squad coming at $55.82 million. And you and I have both basically said is that I don't think it's the performances. I don't think it's the movie itself that is the reason why we're talking about this in the number 10 spot. This is 100% the dual release with
Yep.
the HBO Max. This is still people not sure how to best handle for the sake of COVID. If memory serves me correctly, we were still in seat buffering, so not every seat could be sold. Or
Um,
was this shortly there after they released that?
we
Do
were
you
out of
remember?
seat buffering at this time. I remember
Okay,
seat buffering ended when F9 came out, which is the end of June.
that's right.
Yes.
That's right. So,
So,
but I mean, if this movie also shows us too is the fact that if anybody looks at the Warner Brother dual releases and whatnot, everybody that was a Warner Brother dual release was underperforming. So, this is one of those ones where it's like I easily feel that if that had not happened, we could easily have tacked on another 20 to 30 million dollars on top of this movie.
oh, it would have cleared 100. I have no doubt about that. I think, yeah, I mean, now that we've kind of had a little bit of distance from 2021 to reflect on this,
Hmm.
I would make the case that the Suicide Squad, probably more so than any other movie that came out during 2020 or 2021 during the pandemic, I think this is probably the single biggest movie that took the biggest hit at the box office, thanks to it being a dual release. Because of that, not just because people were used to watching movies on HBO Max at the time, but also because, again, I keep mentioning this when we talk about this. This is a sequel to 2016 Suicide Squad, a
Hmm.
movie that a lot of people did not like. And I think there was going to be a lot of impetus from people saying, like, okay, I hated the first movie, and there are definitely a lot of people that probably didn't understand why this sequel was going to be different because of James Gunn and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
I think there was a little bit more leniency in terms of, you know what, I'm going to hedge my bets on this one. I'm not going to pay for a ticket. I have HBO Max. I'm going to watch it there just to play it safe. And I bet
Yeah.
that's what happened a lot with this movie.
I could definitely see that. I could definitely. Which is it's unfortunate. There the part that is tricky about the way that HBO or Warner Brothers did this 2021 is that they just basically, instead of just saying we're gonna cherry pick which ones we want to do, they just did the whole flat slate.
Yep.
And I do think that there are definitely movies that you know I you and I both, we watched, what was 17 movies that Warner Brothers released last year.
That's right. 17 plus Wonder Woman 84, which was Christmas 2020, which also had the same plan.
Yeah, right. So you figure of the 18, you saw all of them in theaters, and
Yep.
I cherry picked what I wanted to see and whatnot. But I do think that there was a good intention for the sake of that, because I watched all of them just like you did.
Yep.
But there was a bunch of those movies like I would not have watched had it not been for the fact for the dude. Like I probably wouldn't have
Yeah.
seen Cry Macho, I wouldn't have
Yep.
seen the little things and whatnot. So I think the good intentions were there, but I think they were just trying to play it safe because they didn't want to, they had already pissed off enough people by saying they were going to do this,
Yep.
for the sake of the whole slate and whatnot. But
Yep. They couldn't take it back at that point. So
but also too, if you would have said we're going to cherry pick which ones are going to be theatrical only or ones are going to be dual release and whatnot, somebody still would have been mad because they're like, well, why do they get to be cherry picked but I don't, sort of
yeah.
thing. I can
Yeah.
easily see. So,
Yeah.
that has been our top 10 Viola Davis movies at the box office. A very eclectic. If there's one thing that this list can certainly tell us here is, though she does tend to get cast in authoritative characters, she has a very eclectic filmography in terms of the type of movies that she is in, between dramas and comedies and comic book movies and all that fun stuff. So it's always great, and I'm always looking forward to more of what it is Viola Davis is going to provide us here in many many years to come.
Absolutely.
All right. So that has been our top 10 for this week here. What are we looking at possibly doing here for next week? Do we get any hints of what we're doing?
Yeah, I think next week's going to be pretty straightforward because, next week we're going to be talking all about the Batman.
Hmm.
And again, since it's going to be Batman month on the podcast, I think we're just going to do the Batman episode right away next week and get it done because we're going to be in that vibe. So
and going on a lot of those because I'm gonna be watching a lot of Batman here in this month here. That is for sure. So maybe it'll give me an idea of what to kind of expect. So
yeah,
I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I think it'll be I think it's gonna be a very interesting list. Um, have you done any research to see if whether or not we're gonna have any sort of unusual upsets or things that we're not gonna see coming? That's gonna kind of blindside us.
I mean, the leaders on the list definitely aren't going to surprise you
Hmm.
because they were like the biggest, hugest things back in their day. So,
Hmm.
you know, there certainly might be some things like, oh yeah, that is a Batman movie, or like it's not labeled as a Batman movie, but Batman is a prominent character. So there'll be plenty of variety with the movies over the past 30-ish years to talk about in that vein. So
I'm intrigued and I can't wait to see what we've got to talk about for next week.
yeah,
All right. Well, that has been our box office bonus episode for this week. Be sure to check us out every week as we like just to talk about all sorts of fun stuff that just crosses our mind, or I should let me phrase that better. Crosses Derrick's mind because he puts in all the love and work into what it is that we get to talk about every week, and I appreciate you every week.
you're very welcome.
All right. We will check you guys out here next week. Have a good night.
See ya.